Welcome to Of Sound Mind and Spirit. I'm Shelley.
And I'm Lisa. We're sisters walking together on a journey of faith. We're not perfect.
And we definitely don't have all the answers. We're inviting you to walk with us as we explore ways we can better know and grow in our faith together.
Welcome back to another episode from Of Sound Mind and Spirit. Hey, Shelley.
Hey, Lisa.
I think that, if anyone's watching the video version that we're releasing these days, you were making a face while I just said that. So that is the clue for everyone to run over to YouTube and hit that little play button because that's funny.
No.
You're going to learn. Don't make the faces.
God, I forgot. I'm so used to making faces at you to get you to smile before we start recording.
Well, hey, I'm smiling now.
So it worked. But
It did work.
I don't really want everybody to go and see me.
I think I'm going to freeze frame that and put it on Instagram.
Oh, God, she will too, though.
Are you thoroughly embarrassed now?
Yes, thank you. That's a
All
great
right.
way to start.
So that's our topic today is embarrassing your sister. No, I'm just kidding.
Which, if we were handing out gold medals, Lisa would win.
Always. I win everything. Okay, now that I've derailed the podcast. All right, Shelley, what are we talking about?
Today?
All right, what are we talking about?
Okay, so going back to the first episode where we talked about our trip, we also mentioned that we had some other topics in mind. We talked about one of them last week, and this is the second part of that. So we talked about, or we are going to talk about relics, because we went to Sicily, and every church you went into, there were bones of people somewhere.
Very true. I find that on most of my travels, especially in Europe, right? You go into a church and you're like, there's like a frame somewhere, like a thing mounted on the wall with all these little frames inside of it with like little paper tags next to them. And there's like a little piece of something. And you're like, what is that? I don't know. What is that? And you're trying to read it. And so, yes, our recent travels over this summer I think we've wanted to talk about this before, but the recent travels have kind of brought it to the surface, to the forefront, you would say, of our podcast topics list, which is very long, and talk about relics, because that's something that I'll say almost all non-Catholics and some Catholics are like, what the heck?
And you know what's funny, Lisa? I will say that in Sicily, you didn't go in and see little bitty pieces. You went in and you saw like entire bones or skeletons in some cases. You weren't with me on that trip, but holy goodness. There were a lot.
Exactly. It's a very odd thing. At least it can be very odd to people who don't know about it and aren't used to seeing it. And I'll say sometimes I find it very odd. So I'm still not quite used to it. So,
well, I guess some people might be even going, what is a relic? What is it that we're talking about?
Start at the beginning.
Start at the beginning. Well, really what it is it's the remains of a person, or in the Catholic Church, it could also be the remains of something from the Passion of our Lord or from Christ's life. Because obviously there are no relics of Jesus, because he died, was resurrected, and was taken straight up into heaven, the ascension of the Lord. Yeah. So the only thing we have of him would be what we call second-class relics. Those are things that he touched or used during his lifetime. Mm-hmm. So you
bring up an interesting point. You said pieces of somebody or something, but it's not just corporal body parts.
Right.
Relics.
So there's 3 classes of a relic. So you'll hear somebody say it's a first-class relic or a second-class relic or even a third-class relic. So the first class, is the actual piece or part or whole of a saint's body. That's hence the skeletons we saw. The second part, or second-class relic, is something that was personally used or owned by the saint, like a piece of their clothing, mm-hmm. or for example, in Ortesia, went into the big Duomo there in the square where we had dinner all the time.
Hmm.
And they had, well, they had bones, but in another part, they had a dress that had been worn by St. Lucy, who was martyred in the year 302, I think. So, yeah, to have a, what is that, 1700-year-old dress?
Yeah.
It's a second class relic because she wore it.
Mhm.
So, and then a third class relic would be, do you want to say it?
No, go for it.
Okay. Any item that's been touched to a first or second class relic. So it can be a prayer card. It can be a holy medal. It can be, I don't know. There are some people who have met St. Pope John Paul II and they've shaken his hand and then it's like, oh, now I'm a third class relic. So,
and do
that's
you
just
want?
weird.
Okay, so it is odd to me, and this is not even something I think I was aware of growing up. What a relic was.
I'd never heard of it.
I mean, I knew that there were bones on display and things like that, but I didn't really understand it or know what exactly it was. Do you want to? We can talk more about examples or what we've seen or how we've thought about it, but like, do you want to say why? Like, what's the purpose of having these relics, and why are we digging up people and putting their bones on display?
So, you know me, I've got like the whole history lesson in my head.
That's why I'm pointing to you.
But let's start with why. Why do we have relics in churches and what's their value and importance? I know a lot of people today. Sorry, I'm pausing. And for those of you who aren't watching the video, I'm watching me think out loud or in my think quietly. So the relics are reminders or tangible connections for us to people that we love. And we love the saints. We love Jesus. We love holy men and women who remind us to be focused on our faith. They witnessed the faith and they're honored and respected for it. So just like you would have a loved one, like your grandmother, maybe a godmother or an aunt or a dear friend, and after they pass, you might keep something special of theirs to remind you of them. I've often talked about Granny keeping her mother's picture framed in the hallway and how special it was to us that, oh my gosh, that's Granny's mother. And so that's how we came to know her or know of her. Do you have anything like that, Lisa, that, helps you to connect to a loved one that's passed?
You mentioned this to me earlier, and I was like, I don't know, but I did think of something. I was walking through my living room, and I look up, and I see I have these gold and green, think very 70s, very gaudy glasses, and they have frogs dancing on them. Gold and green. And they were our grandmother's, not Granny, but the other grandmother, Granny Murr. They were Granny Murr's glasses. And she had a love of frogs. She had frogs everywhere. People collected things, And I actually bought those glasses for her as a little kid with my own money at a garage sale and gave them to her. And at some point, I got them back. And I'd kind of forgotten that I had them. And she has passed, many years ago. And I'd forgotten I had them until I moved recently. And we were unpacking boxes and I opened a shoebox and there are those glasses. So now they are sitting out on my new bar on a tray, displayed. And I'm making an effort to use them because it makes me think of her, her obsession for frogs and the fact that this was a connection I had with her because I gave them to her and she used them and then I got them back. And so, yeah, so that's.
So now when you use them, you'll always think of her.
Exactly. And my kids too, like they know that those were hers and they have memories of her and the frogs. And so it's a kind of a reminder to us of her.
Oh, that's beautiful. I've seen those. They're really cute.
Yeah, they're pretty bright and gaudy, but I don't know. All that stuff's back in now, so whatever.
No, I think it's special that you use them. So, but I digress. I know also in this day and age, there are a lot of families that have cremated remains of loved ones in their home.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they take them out to scatter. Maybe they keep them kind of as a small tabernacle or of sorts in their home, a little altar, little side place honoring that person that's died. Or even we go to the cemetery and we honor them there. And so when you think, oh my gosh, how weird for a church to have a piece of a body or a bone, we do have something we can kind of look at the same way today. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's kind of what the equation is, why I'll use the churchy word, we venerate the relics. And really that's just a fancy churchy word for saying we honor them. We show respect to them. Mm-hmm. And yeah. So
yeah.
Now, when you want the history lesson for how that came about.
You should write a blog post about that.
Oh, okay.
An article. That's what we call them nowadays, articles. You should write about that. That would be kind of cool. I think people would enjoy, the people who are interested in history. I think there's a lot of people these days who really want to know how traditions or things like that came to be. So I think put pen to paper or
I think that's Lisa's
keyboard.
way of saying she doesn't want me to talk about a bunch of history on the podcast.
What? No. That's not what I said. There's somebody right now.
How long have we known each other?
There is somebody right now being like, Lisa, let her talk.
And there's somebody else going, Shelley, shut up.
That's the beauty of the podcast.
Okay. Well, I will save that and write a couple paragraphs and throw it in the blog for you or the website.
An article. Yeah. Yeah, that's, I wasn't really super aware. There's so many things. So I did work at my parish in the parish office for, I don't know, about 10 years. And so there's so many things I became aware of working at the church, right? So many things, like, it's one of those, like, we should do a podcast on that. Like, how did I not know all these things? I just think most normal Catholics, like, we can't know everything. We don't know everything. And there's so many things. Anyway, I first became aware really of relics when our new church building was being built and dedicated, because I was, the communications person. And so I had to communicate about all these things. And I'm like, wait, we're doing what? What's going in the altar? What are we doing? And sure enough, we had I forgot what bone it is. There's a bone of St. Angela Merici in the altar, or underneath, actually, at the bottom, the base of the altar at our parish.
Yes, and that's you telling me about that and me seeing the communications. Thank you. You did a good job. For that was my first introduction to what is a relic, because I didn't know either. And I remember asking, I want to go see what this is. What are we supposed to do with this again?
Yeah. And at the dedication of the building of the church, that's when they placed the relic in the base of the altar. And most people couldn't see it because, the church is kind of big, and it's, the priest, or I can't remember if the cardinal did it or our pastor did it, but, they bend down and they put it in the base. But I
couldn't see it when it was happening.
Yeah.
But what I remember, and I went back and found my photos of it. That's what's so cool. And so I know it was October of 2018. No, 2017.
It was the same year as Harvey.
17?
So whatever Harvey
17.
was. Okay. Because it was delayed because of Harvey.
So I have
Hurricane Harvey, for those people who don't live in the Houston area.
Oh, yeah. When we just call it Harvey, everybody gets it.
Yeah.
So I have a picture of our worship space that's in what's now the PLC, the Parish Life Center. And there are chairs set up in front of it, and right on a little table is this reliquary. That's what we call the container that holds the relic. And it's kind of in gold, like a monstrance a little bit, kind of ornate. Mm-hmm. And then really tiny little piece of bone with, I think there's a wax seal and a little strip of paper that identifies Saint Angela Merici, and then in Latin it says something like bone. I think that's the word that was in Latin. And there's candles on each side, and there's people just sitting and praying, spending time thinking about Saint Angela Merici, who she was, what she did, and why she's important to our parish, and just kind of resting there with her, thinking about her. And I thought, okay, so that's what this is, And I was really surprised how teeny tiny of a little flaky piece.
I have a picture. I have a picture of the reliquary and her bone, and maybe I'll share that. But it is tiny. And for me, that's half the battle when I see, now that I know that these exist, these teeny tiny little, I call them picture frames. They look like little bitty picture frames with a thing in it and a little piece of paper. And that's half the battle, is like, who is it? What's it from? Like, what saint is it? And of course, some places have like big, popular, like very famous saints, and then others, you have no idea. You've never heard of these saints. And I think that it kind of helps you realize, I mean, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of named saints in the church. How many there are? It's crazy. So last summer we were in France, and we were staying at this hotel that used to be a chateau, right? And there was a chapel in it, because I guess people who had chateaus had private chapels. And there were a bunch of relics in there, like still like framed little. And it was so funny, because we're in there trying to be respectful, and we're like, who is it? What is it? Like, can you read it? No. And so I took pictures, but I can't read it. Like ancient French, I don't know. So, but it's so fascinating to think, how did those come to be there, and why? Like, were those specific saints important to the family who lived there, or maybe to the priest who came and celebrated mass in their chapel? Or, I like to think of that, because, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think most of the time the relics are, when they're in a specific place, we'll say somebody there had a connection to that saint. I don't mean like they knew them. I mean like they looked up to them, that they were important to their own spiritual development, that kind of thing, or to the parishes or wherever it is. And that's why they sought that relic.
Yeah, I've got one of those too. When the day Mom and Dad and I went into Sambuca, I think I mentioned that there was this like really old church from the 1300s that had been destroyed or damaged in the earthquake, the same earthquake that destroyed Port Royal, and had just reopened after 5 years of sort of a restoration. I mean, they had stabilized the church, but then they had just reopened it a month or two earlier from our visit. And in the back corner, and I've got a really tight zoomed in picture, there is a glass box. I mean, it can't be more than 2 feet by 3 feet, something like that. And there are all these bones crammed in there with a skull, like right here with the, I mean, it was really kind of creepy. There is a plaque, a very old plaque, handwritten on paper, framed on the side wall. And I zoomed in to take that picture. And the long and the short of it is, it had the name of the saint in Latin, and it looked like Epiphany. And it had the seal that said it was approved in 1642.
Wow. Again, been there a really long time.
I still can't figure out who the saint is. I mean, I Googled, but if anybody from Sicily hears this and knows who the saint is in Sambuca, would you please let me know? That's a long shot.
That's, yeah.
So that's funny. But, so what else about...
Well, I would say I used to think it was kind of rare. Like when we got the one for our parish, I thought it was kind of rare. Like, oh, that's really cool. We got one, and then you go other places and they got a lot. And I don't just mean in Europe. Like there's a retreat center here in Houston that we've been, we both been to a few times, and they're doing massive renovations, and they just renovated one of their chapels, and they just got 3 new relics, and first class. And it was so surprising. I need to talk to her. Like, how did you get them? Like, can I get one? Like, but they chose two of the saints. I can't remember which ones. But they were saints that their stories, their spirituality, their love of God really means something to the chapel and to the women and the men who come there to experience on retreat. And then the other one was important to one of the priests who come there to hear confessions and to celebrate mass and things like that. And it was not one that I'd heard of before. So it was kind of cool. So but then I'm like, our church only has one and y'all have three. Like, is this a thing? I don't know. I know. I need to get over the jealous issue, but it was so interesting.
Lisa. So really, relics can be distributed by the bishop. In our case, would be a cardinal, but by the bishop of the archdiocese, and also religious orders are permitted to carry and distribute relics.
Oh, cool.
So I did find that in some of my looking up. What are relics? Where did they come from? Why do we have them? So
now, something that you mentioned, gifted. Have you ever been gifted a relic? Probably not a first class, like a second or a third class relic from somebody.
Yes, actually, I've received it's a third class relic. So in episodes about going on vacation and using your vacation as a pilgrimage, I've talked a few times about going to the St. Francis Cabrini shrine that's in Colorado, near Denver in the mountains. And when you go there, I don't know if they still have it, but when I went there, they have, I wish I'd brought it to show on the video, but they have a little, like a prayer card, and inside of it is a little piece of fabric, and that is stated to be a third class relic, meaning that they've touched this to any number of the relics that they have of St. Francis Cabrini. And I think the majority of the relics I saw on display there are second class relics. Her walking cane that she used to tap the ground where the water flowed, her writing desk, different pieces of clothing that she wore. So technically, I do have a third class relic of St. Francis Cabrini. Now ask me where it is at the moment. I'm sure it's tucked into a Bible or, a prayer book somewhere.
This is why we're going to record on decluttering again.
Oh, I've seen it recently. I just don't know which book it's in.
When we were in Chicago a couple years ago, and we went to
the National Shrine of St. Maximilian Kolbe at Marytown.
There we go.
It's some suburb of Chicago.
Yeah, in Marytown, Illinois. So they had a first class relic. They had a piece of his. Didn't they have like one hair of his beard or something?
I don't remember if they had a first class relic. They had a brick from Auschwitz where he died. Okay. And that was a second class relic. Okay. And people were touching everything.
That's what I was going to say. We were even encouraged, I bought a rosary at the gift shop, and we were all encouraged, to go back down to where they had everything and touch our items to the relic so that they could be a third class relic. And then a priest, before we left, came in and blessed all of our items. So, and a blessing, he's saying a prayer, calling on the Holy Spirit, saying a prayer over the items. So that was, I hadn't experienced that. I had never been encouraged to touch something to a relic. So that was interesting. That was different for me.
So I have touched a few other things to a relic before, and I should have led this story instead of the St. Francis, but this one, I don't know if I've told you this though. So that's what comes to mind. Okay. So you know how sometimes relics will come over from Rome or from special places and they'll go on tour throughout the United States. Do you remember? We've had a couple that have gone through lately.
I didn't know that until you went to one. I'd never heard of that before. I didn't know relics toured.
Okay. So there were like a national tour of relics, and it's a huge number of relics, but that's not the one specifically I'm talking about. But I did touch a rosary to all of those. So technically my rosary is I need to make sure I set that aside and keep it special.
Do you know where that is?
Yes, I do. But it's one I use, so I need to,
okay.
that does make it a third class relic to a bunch of them. So St. Jude. Jude Thaddeus, St. Jude, the patron of impossible causes.
Mhm.
His arm was on tour, and it's a piece of bone from his arm,
Uh-huh.
and it's set up in like a reliquary that looks like an arm. That's the weird part. So it looks from like elbow with the whole hand,
Okay.
and then the piece of the bone is like somewhere in the middle. And it was on tour. So I went to a writer's retreat last October in Michigan, and the tour was there, and I chose not to go. I didn't really feel called to go see St. Jude's arm. I just whatever, and I didn't go. So then the tour ended up here in Houston, actually in Sugar Land at a nearby parish, and I was like, oh, how funny! It's following me, like right, this arm just keeps coming, and I had other plans and I didn't go. I had things I just really could have probably moved them, but I didn't want to because the other things were more important to me than going to see this relic. So we've left you. You're in Spain, and my family and I were in Rome, and we've walked by a church that says Padre Pio Relics this way, and it's the San Salvatore Delaro or something like that. It's right over the bridge. And my husband and my daughter are huge, like, oh, Padre Pio. Oh, I want to go see his, the relics of him, his gloves, blah, blah, blah. So we're going there, and they're closing, like they're finishing Mass, and they're closing up for Mass. And we're just like, oh, please, please, please drop a little donation. Can we walk through? So they're over there looking at Padre Pio, and I'm walking around looking at all the others, St. John Paul II, blah, blah, blah. And I turn around, and Lisa, I kid you not, there is the stupid arm. And it is St. Jude, and there's the arm. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? 3 times in less than a year? I
hope
somebody tell me something.
Okay, so I'm assuming you're like, okay, St. Jude, I see you. So
it gets better.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Okay.
So I'm in tears because I'm like, what is going on? And the man who's closing up the church comes over to me, and I'm trying to ask him this question, and all my Spanish has left my head, because usually in Rome you can kind of speak a little Spanish and everybody gets
I was about to say, you weren't in Spain. Okay.
And so I'm literally typing into Google Translate, as fast as I can, and showing him. And I'm like trying to tell him the story about how this arm was in Michigan and I couldn't go. And it was in Texas and I couldn't go. And here I walk in completely randomly off the streets, and it's right there. He goes and he gets it. And he takes it out of the case. It's in one of those a glass box. So the arm is inside the glass box. He takes the case off the relic. And then he goes and gets a key. And then he comes and he takes it off the altar, and he leans over from the side altar, and he's telling us to kiss it. And you're kind of like, wait, this is weird. But he's like, no, kiss it. And so I kissed the relic. Cameron, Brian, myself, we all kissed the relic. Okay. And then they gave us a prayer card that had been touched to the relic. They gave us a little gold charm to wear on a necklace that touched the relic. And so then he, put it back, and he was beaming. He was so excited. They showed us a picture of Mel Gibson with the relic, all these things. They were like, oh, and they made our day. They stayed 30 minutes after that church was supposed to close. Oh, wow. Showing us around. And then locked up and walked off. It was a husband and wife, and they walked off together, the cutest little couple.
So now you're a third-class relic. Your lips. But
I didn't even think of that.
Tell me, you don't have to give me specific. I'm not asking for you to like share your heart vulnerable here, except for a little bit. But so what was that prayer like afterwards of, to 1, intercession to St. Jude, and 2, to God, what is the impossible? You're like, oh my gosh, is there an impossible cause that I didn't
do an impossible cause. I was just soaking everything all in. It was just it was just God kind of encountering me on this whole trip, saying, here I see you, here you're here I am here. Oh, here I am over there. Here I am over there. And just those little moments that just consolations that fill you up and just make you so just.
Gosh, I think I would have been a blubbering mess, because I think I would have been like, oh my gosh, there's something that I have been thought was beyond to pray for. And that was God saying, like, do it right now. You think it's too far gone or, impossible causes, right? Like, pray for it.
I never thought of that. Never thought of
Maybe
that.
I've got some things in my psyche I don't want to, but that's how I would take
maybe
it.
I should spend more time learning about St. Jude.
St. Jude,
I'm thinking about it.
I think it was a year-end reflection or one of those podcasts right around the turn of the 2024 words of the year and saint of the year. The first time I did saint of the year, St. Jude was my saint.
Ooh.
So I did, spend a little time reading about him. Or learning about him.
Well, I think you need to go to Rome.
Yeah, it is. I've been to the airport. I don't think that counts though. So no, I've not been to Rome, but I would love, this is what I would love.
We need a sister trip to Rome.
I think we need a sister trip to, going to Europe is so hard for me because I love saints. Like I have like a strange fascination with so many saints, and everywhere you turn there, you're like one block away from this, something where this saint was, or that saint was, or like I was in Normandy, which is 30 minutes from Lisieux with Saint Therese. I've been to the Pyrenees, 4 times and have not been to Lourdes. I mean, it's so weird. I've been, I'm in Spain this summer and with our foreign exchange students family, and her dad's like, oh, well, if it continues raining, and we're going to go do this boat tour, but if it continued raining, we were going to take you to Loyola to see where St. Ignatius was from, and, blah, blah, blah. Cool. And he's like, it's just up the road. And it's just it's so overwhelming, to be places. Oh, St. Teresa of Avila, like we're in Spain doing a tour in this little bitty town, and everywhere you see, it's like footsteps of St. Teresa, it's
to go so far and be so close and still not be able to connect.
I want to do, this is me. And if anyone knows of a pilgrimage this way, or maybe we create our own pilgrimage, I want to go and go see, worship, venerate, I guess is the right word. Where some of these saints lived and are resting, kind of just go see our favorites. What do you think?
That would be cool.
Because I don't think the rest of my family
sounds like
really wants to do that with me.
It sounds like we could start in the United States. Might be a little easier to start first, though.
Very true. Very true. I do have some. One would be the Stanley Rother Shrine in Oklahoma City.
Yes.
Because I saw it last weekend. I was in Oklahoma City. I have not been inside yet. So that would be a first step, probably.
I think you and I just need to go on a road trip.
How about can we fly?
To Oklahoma? That's so close.
No, I flew to Oklahoma this weekend. Road trip's fine. I grew up doing road trips. We get distracted, and then it takes us like double the time to get somewhere. But no, I will say real quickly that I did have the opportunity to see Saint Bernadette of Lourdes, who saw the Virgin Mary in Lourdes. I did get to see her. I'm going to say body in Nevers, France, like where she was in her convent after Lourdes. And when I was a foreign exchange student in France, the family I was living with, Mom mailed me her book on incorruptibles. And that's where, when they exhume the bodies of these men and women that they are on the process of canonization to be a saint, they exhume their bodies, right? And there have been, I was going to say a few, but I think it's more than a few, whose bodies haven't deteriorated. And Saint Bernadette is one of them. And so her body is laying in the chapel there. And so when I got the book, I don't know why Mom mailed me that book. I can't remember. Overseas in the 90s, and I'm flipping through it, and they're like, oh, she's down the road. I know this one. And so they took me there. And so I think of it now that I had no idea anything about Saint Bernadette. I bought a crucifix there, and I read all that in my travel journal. And there's so many things I feel like I've, again, so close and missed. So I just feel like God's like, it's okay. It's okay. You got time. So one day So I got to say
Okay.
St. Bernadette, but I didn't understand it.
I think for a lot of us, that's what happens. We see things that we don't understand yet about our faith. And they are items and people who lead us to curiosity, or they lead us to want to know more about, well, who is the Saint Bernadette? Why is her body out here where we can see them? What are these bones? What is this tiny little silver? And why is it in this reliquary with a wax seal and a,
And why are there a whole bunch of them?
and why do we put them in the altar?
Yeah.
Right? Why do we put them in the altar? So
you're right. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. You're right, because when I was going back and reading my travel journal from that trip, I did say, I wonder who she was. She must have been a very I think I said good person, to be a saint and to, everyone's, I mean, it was a long line to stand in line to walk past her, I had a lot of curiosity about her. So I guess you're right.
What were you, like 19, 20 years old then?
I think I was 19. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Been Catholic my whole life. But, there's so many things we don't know that we don't know. And, so, yeah.
Or maybe they said it during CCE class and we just weren't paying attention because we were like, teenagers.
Oh, I'm sure there's so many things that have gone in one ear and out, like.
Well, do you want to know why the churches have them in the altars?
Oh, yeah. I know I've heard it again, but I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay. It's a little bit of a history lesson really quick.
Okay, quickly.
So, okay. So, before the 300s, before Constantine, all the Christians were being martyred, right? In Rome, they were just being slaughtered, martyred, and killed. And then they would be buried in secret, right? But then after Constantine came and early 300s, he legalized the Christianity as a religion that you could celebrate or practice. Monuments were put on top of some of these graves, some of these saints like St. Agnes, St. Sebastian, St. Lawrence, St. Francis of Rome, etc. They started putting the St. Peter, they put monuments there. They knew where they'd been buried. They kept it secret, but then they built first a monument, like an altar, and then a church. And so that's what happened. And then, so their bodies were there in these churches. And then as other churches were being built, the remains of the saints parts of them would be taken and transferred and be enshrined in the altar right below the point of consecration, where the priest elevates the host and transubstantiation takes place. So, churchy words, sorry, go look it up. And
the body and blood, the Eucharist becomes the body and blood of Christ during the Mass at the consecration. That is transubstantiation. Okay, go.
Yeah. Trans to change, substantiation, the substance of. Okay. And so it's become common practice to have a relic placed in the altar. And we didn't have one because our church wasn't the formal worship space. It was a temporary transitional worship space. And I don't know if that's common or uncommon today in the U.S. and in growing parishes to have one, but we were given one of St. Angela Merici by our cardinal. And it is right there. And if you ever get the opportunity, Lisa, well, you've had the opportunity, but just go and walk behind, you can actually see the little spot. But that's why they kiss it. They come up and they bow and kiss the altar, and they're actually kissing not just the altar, but they're actually kissing, and St. Angela Merici is right below it. I thought that was kind of cool.
I like that. That is kind of cool. I've learned a whole lot of new things today.
Okay. Just an aside for people who are listening who are in the United States, and maybe you can't travel to Europe to see all these really cool relics. There are a couple of shrines in the U.S. that have massive numbers of saint relics, and I have not been to any of these. The first one is Maria Stein Shrine, and it's in Ohio, and they have over 1,100 relics.
Wow.
In 970 reliquaries representing 900 saints.
Wow.
And no, I don't have a clue how they got all of them. I just looked up where can we find lots of relics in the U.S. So there's a chapel in Pittsburgh that has 5,000 saint relics.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
We need to go to the Midwest.
It sounds like it, right? Because the other one is in Chicago. So clearly we need a
We
road
were
trip
there.
to that area.
Yeah.
Yeah. It says it's St. John Cantius Church in Chicago. It's home to about 1,800 relics.
Oh, my
Donated from a
goodness.
variety of sources, mostly from priests.
Huh.
Oh, only a small portion is on public display. They're
Oh,
secured in a vault. So
How about
there you go.
1,800? That would take you forever to look at.
And I thought it was kind of cool when I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and walked in and saw a bunch of relics, and I think there were 27.
Yeah. I was impressed. We were in the St. Maximilian Kolbe Shrine outside of Chicago, and they had a couple of different like framed areas with all of the little reliquaries in them. So who knew? Who knew?
And some
I
old
was
saints
impressed.
in there too.
I'm impressed that our retreat center that I go to here in Houston has 3. Look at me.
C'est la vie.
I know. It's crazy. All right.
Oh, I got one more for you.
Okay.
Because we talked briefly at the beginning, I mentioned that there are relics of Christ. You know, like the shot of Turin could be considered a relic of Christ, or is. At St. Mary Major in Rome, they have wood from the manger where the baby Jesus was laid.
Cool.
Do not ask me the provenance of that or how they know that's where that wood comes from. I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
But there it is, and it's kind of cool to go and it's a cool experience because it's down below the altar,
Mm-hmm.
and so you go down these steps down below, and there's this statue of a pope, I think it is, praying, and his eyes are actually up on the stained glass window of the resurrection or the crucifixion. I forget which now. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's in this wrapped spot, and you can see the wood. It's kind of cool. So you can go and kneel and pray in front of it.
Okay. Well, I feel like we've learned a lot. But yeah, that's awesome. So I guess the question that we ask of you, dear listener, would be, are you experienced? Have you seen relics? Have you venerated relics? Do you have a relic in your house? Like, and what does it mean to you to venerate or to respect these holy men and women and Christ, of course, when you see these items that remind you of them?
Sorry, I'm all tucked out. I mean, I could go for more, but
no, that's a first. No.
now I want to go and find my pictures.
I know. And now I'm sitting here thinking, how many more have I seen? And I didn't know that I saw or what it was. Probably too many to count. Probably every time I've walked into, I was going to say an old church, but not even old churches. There's probably all over the place that have them. So, yeah.
Who knows? Open your eyes, pay attention, and you never know what you're going to find.
And ask questions. All right. Thank you for listening today. We are so glad that you're with us and watching. Sorry, those of you who are popped onto YouTube and watching. We I think we're enjoying the video thing. We'll see. Mm-hmm. Shelley makes her faces.
She's enjoying the video.
But we appreciate you being here, either listening or watching, and we hope to hear from you. Leave us your feedback. Let us know not only about relics, but if there's a topic that we can move up on our podcast topic list, a question maybe for our non-Catholic friends that are listening. Like, is there a question that you're like, why do you do this? Or what does this mean to you? Or heck, even if you're Catholic and you're like, why? I don't understand. We might not understand either, but we can either find out or we'll have a guest on to help us all learn about it, which would be awesome. All right, Shell.
All right.
I will, I was gonna say I'll talk to you later, but I guess we're gonna stop recording and then I'll probably keep talking to you.
Probably. That's what you usually do.
Probably
You'll just call me on the phone.
Yeah.
Wait,
right.
Is that even a thing like that?
I don't know. I think kids do this.
The phone now is like this?
Right, because you hold the phone, so your whole hand goes on I don't know. Anyway. All right. Thanks for listening. We will see you next Thursday.
Bye, y'all.